we're starting this long journey on going on faith, and so we're doing lessons and encouragement on faith. And there are only a couple places in Scripture where faith is mentioned. So no, that's not really true. And I was thinking about this and trying to think about how do you approach something that is so vast? How does that work? And so I thought about it. I thought, the first thing that hit me was, because you've been part of the church for a long time doesn't mean you have faith. You might just be old. It's true. I've been part of this fellowship for going on my 41st year. And that's very, very old. It really is true. But, there's a lot of things that you begin to figure out. And one of the things that you figure out is that you know less than you thought you did 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 30 years ago. And that seems to happen. But I want to start with, do I have command? The journey begins. I tried to make this at least, but I'm a nerd, so it's not going to work necessarily to butter things up a little bit. But let's talk about faith. So we're going to start in Hebrews chapter 11. I'm going to spend a little bit of time in Hebrews chapter 11, and then we're going to spend some time in Genesis chapter 11 and 12. And I'm thinking you might learn something, but we'll find out. Here's hoping. Thank you very much. Who said that? Here's hoping. Now, faith is confidence in what we hope for, and assurance about what we do not see. There's this thing within us, this faith within us that gives us a confidence and a hope in God and what God is doing in our lives and where God is directing us. And the fact that I've been part of the fellowship for 40 years means that I have way more stories than you do. I want to tell you a little one right now. And this sort of describes our weird dealings with faith. I was sitting at a staff meeting here in Boston when my wife and I were on staff, and we had broken up men and women. And this is the 1980s. I don't know how far ago it was. And I don't know why I remember this, but it just struck me. So we were sitting there having a meeting, and somebody threw out a question. And the question was, and this is for the brothers. You're walking across the street. You see a pretty woman, a pretty girl. You have a lustful thought. You get hit by a bus, and you die. This is a true question.
Sounds fair.
And the question was, do I go to heaven? And the great minds and the great scholars and the leadership of our movement came up with this answer. I don't know. That's not a good representation of somebody who's faithful. That doesn't show us that we have a really, really good, deep understanding of what God thinks of us. Right? It's a little crazy. But over the years, what I've found is that we look at these concepts as in some sort of strange paradox, and it gets so tangled and misconceived that it just isn't as simple as faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. And I said earlier, sometimes we're faithful and sometimes we're just faithful to going to church. Yep. Or faithful to going to midweek. Or faithful to going to Bible talk. And not really faithful. And I can't tell you, nor can you tell me, if I or you have faith. That's something you've got to figure out on your own. But there is a hope and a certainty that we can have in what God is doing in our lives. Even when we have no idea what God is doing in our lives. And sometimes years later, we figure that out. And you go back and go, oh, that's what God was doing in my life. All right, here we go. And so I split it up in verse 1, now in verse 6. And without faith, now here's the paradox, right? You got to have faith. And without faith, it's impossible to please God. Just think about that. What about all these great things I've done for you, God? And without faith, it's impossible to please God. Because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. There's a lot of things we can do in our Christianity. There's a lot of things we can do in our fellowship. We give lots of money. We reach out to the poor. We can do all of these things and we can still miss the mark if we don't have faith. And you're thinking about, wow, this is a really cheery lesson. Really cheery. But I'm trying to get our mind about it is that there's a simplicity and a complexity about faith, right? The complexity is all the things that surround it, and the simplicity is, do we have it or don't we? And don't misunderstand what I'm saying. You might be thinking to yourself, I don't know where I am. I thought I had faith, but after him talking, I'm not really sure about that anymore. That's fine. We can get there, right? And it's not to say that, you're always on this faith high. You can have faith and be in the dump and still have a mustard seed of faith. Sometimes that's all we have to hold on to. I still have some bit of faith in my life. Like I said, we've been part of the church now for going on 41 years. We have lived in Boston, Denver, Phoenix, LA, San Diego for 15 years. Moved back and lived in Rollinsford for 10 years. Then moved to Texas for 8 years, God rest my soul. And then now have moved back here. And I'm sorry, those were in my notes, but I wasn't supposed to say them. And I think, we go through those highs and lows like crazy. Like, there are days where I just feel like I have no idea where God is and don't know what's going on in my life. And there are other days, obviously, we feel connected. That happens to every single faithful Christian. Period. End of story. Think, well, I'm up and down. Yeah, well, welcome to the club. We got jackets. But what I want to do is, I want to use this example in Genesis chapter 11 and 12 to get us to sort of understand the beginning of faith from scriptural point of view. So let's go there. God, am I supposed to be able to read that? God, who typed those things? Wait, I brought notes because I can't see that far. Here we go. All right. This is entitled The 600-Mile Journey. This is So what I thought I would do is that, it was really easy that if we're going to talk about faith, we should start in Genesis chapter 12. But I don't know. I just thought it'd be more fun to start at the end of Genesis chapter 11. And hopefully you'll see why. Because I've looked at this and I wonder, does anybody else think this besides me? So let's find out. Starting in Genesis 11, verse 27, it says, this is the account of Terah's family line. Terah became the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And Haran became the father of Lot. While his father Terah was still alive, Haran died in Ur of the Chaldeans. Ur of the Chaldeans. We got, hang on, you know what we need? We need maps. Okay, Ur of the Chaldeans, right here, over here in the Persian Gulf, over near the Arabian side of the world. And so that's where they begin. Haran died in Ur of the Chaldeans in the land of his birth. Abram and Nahor both married. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah, and she was the daughter of Haran, the father of both Milcah and Ishka. I'm sure you wanted to know that. Now Sarai or Sarah as we know her later, was childless because she was not able to conceive. Terah took his son Abram, his grandson Lot of Haran, and his daughters-in-law, the wife of the son of Abram, and together they set out from Ur of the Chaldeans to go to Canaan. Now this sounds like, if you read Genesis chapter 12, this kind of sounds like Abraham going to Canaan, right? Yeah. But in chapter 11, his father is getting the clan together, and they're going to Canaan. They set out from Ur to go to Canaan, but when they came to Haran, 600 miles later, which is right up here, you can see Haran, right? That area is called now today Turkey. But when they came to Haran, they settled there. They settled there. Why did they settle? First of all, we don't know for sure if Terah just did this on his own, or he was called by God just like Abraham would be a couple of hundred years later. But it's strange to me that somehow he decided, I think we'll go from Ur to this other place called what we called Israel. But go to Canaan. The song, To Canaan's Land. Anyway. That's where they're going to go. But the problem is he didn't finish the song. He stopped after 600 miles. Why would you stop there? Well, I don't know. Mediterranean Sea sounds good. After living where they were living, And, the nice place to live, so that's where they decided to go. It's interesting that if you think that God had called them the whole way, turns out they didn't go far enough. They just sort of dropped out and said, this is good. This is far enough. Feeling good about living here. We'll stay here. And I was thinking about that. It's funny, I was telling this story earlier. And I don't know that, except for the person I told it to, I'm not sure anybody really knows this story. So I'm going to tell you another story that you probably have never heard before, but you need to know it because you're part of this ministry. In 1984, my wife and I became Christians. In 1985, a year later, my wife and I went into the full-time ministry. At the same time, there was a young man who was a freshman at the University of New Hampshire. Laura and I graduated from UNH. And he met a woman who he knew from high school, and she was part of the church in Boston. So he would go down there for crew, right, for meets. And so he met up with her one day, and they started talking, and she convinced him to come to church and started studying the Bible. And I remember, oh my goodness, let's see if I can do these names. Scott Green, if anybody knows that name, for 1,000 years ago. Scott Green was studying the Bible with him. And so he got baptized the exact same weekend that Laura and I went into the full-time ministry. And Scott came up to me and said, well, because he lived up here, he's all yours. In other words, I was supposed to take care of him. Now, you got to remember, I lived in Methuen, 50 miles from here. But I decided on my own to appoint myself evangelist of the one-person ministry here in Dover. Nobody wanted the gig. Nobody wanted the gig. They're just going to let them do whatever, right? So I started coming up here. So what I would do is I'd come up on Wednesday, hang out with him for a while, walk around campus. This is the thing that blew me away about him, is that he knew more people on campus by miles in the 1 year he had been on campus than my 4 years being on campus. Of course, I was an engineering major, so we don't do social. But he did social, right? And so he did, we did that, and we got in some trouble, but that's kind of how it goes. And I had belonged to InterVarsity Christian Fellowship, and I was getting with Andy Bocher, if anybody knows that name, that's the guy. And one day he showed up in Andy's room, and I walked in, and we had a little spiritual discussion. That was fun, because he was leading all the ministry here. But So what happened then is that he went home for the summer. He came back in the fall, and Alan, I don't know if you remember Alan. I'm trying to remember Alan's last name. Alan Wood. Gee, that's a tough one. Alan had reached out to me and said, hey, I want to join your ministry. So he joined the ministry, and the great thing about Alan, he had a very, very important character about him. He had a car. Very important. So they became part, and then we had 2. And in 18 months, we then had 10. So we had 10 brothers and sisters in the campus ministry as part of our ministry. And so that ministry eventually got adopted by the University of Lowell ministry. And they went from 10 to 30. And then what happened is they got intense persecution from my alma mater. Like, they were in the newspaper all the time. It was so bad that the Manchester Union leader came out and scolded the University of New Hampshire and supported the campus students, interestingly enough. But what happened after that was, of course, that a lot of those people settled here. When they eventually graduated, they got married, and they stayed in Dover, New Hampshire, in the Dover area. Thus began this ministry. Now you know. That's how it went down. But it's important because, I think sometimes we don't understand the journey, right? But here's the problem that I have in light of that. What happened to all those people? Did they stop in Haran and didn't go all the way? Now, I'm not saying they're not faithful. I don't know their status. But they didn't complete the journey, a lot of them. And again, I can't speak to all of them. But in our Christian walk, in our faith, part of being faithful is going all the way. Part of being faithful is completing the journey. I have more failures in my spiritual life in the last 40 years than I'd even want to talk to you about. But one of the qualities that I have, that my wife has, and so many of you have, is you get up again. And you find your faith in God. So let's go to chapter 12. Oh, we got a map. That's good. Chapter 12, starting in verse 1. Oh, wait, I got this. The journey, a sequel. The Lord said to Abram, go from your country, your people, and your father's household, and I will show you, in the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. So Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him the last 400 miles. Abram was 75 years old when he set out from Haran. He took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, all the possessions that he had accumulated, and the people they had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan, and they arrived theirs. Abram traveled through the land as far as the site of the great tree of Moreh. I personally have never been there. At Shechem. At that time, the Canaanites were in the land. The Lord appeared to Abram and said, to your offspring I will give this land. So he built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. One of the things we know about Abram, and we're going to get into this a little bit, is that he was a massive failure in so many ways, spiritually. He was. Hey, she's not really my wife. She's my daughter. Or, she's my cousin. Sure, you can date her. That's fine. We're going to read it again. Like it says in verse 10, now there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down to Egypt to live there for a while because the famine was severe. As he was about to enter Egypt, he said to his wife Sarah, I know what a beautiful woman you are. When the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife. Then they will kill me, but will let you live. Say you are my sister, so that I will be treated well for your sake, and my life will be spared because of you. Oh, that is so noble. Wow. I mean, you got to appreciate a guy like Abraham, right? He's this faithful man for at least 15 minutes. Or at least 400 miles, right? I got the 400 miles down. And it didn't take long for that kind of stuff to understand. And I think, to me, the great test in life is faithfulness. It's getting up when you get down. It's rising when you fall. Wait, that's the same thing. It's understanding that you and I, when we fail in our faith, one of the guarantees we have from God is you can always go back. I can't for the life of me tell you how many times I've gotten up and gone back. Some of it may be major things, and some of it may be, boy, that was a lousy day. I got to get plugged back in. I got to get faithful to God again. And these are the things, because what happens with us, it's not the big things that kill our faith. It's the accumulation of a bunch of little ones. It's the slow drops of water that land on your head to the point of time you just can't do it anymore. It's like a water torture or something. It's that, all the little things. And one of the things that's most helpful, and we do this so little. We talk about a lot of things in our fellowship. A lot of things. But how often do we say, I need help with my faith? Because somehow saying that means that you're just sort of, something's wrong with you. How could that possibly happen? And if anybody ever says that to you, your response is, yeah, well, dude, what about you? Because we've all gone through it. Right? We've all gone through it. One of the things that's going to happen over these next several weeks is you're going to learn about all sorts of different ways to enhance, to grow your faith, to stay faithful, to stay plugged in. But the thing that is interesting to me, and I'll go back to what I said at the beginning. A lot of us, sorry to say, have gotten old. By the way, how old are you?
I'm 49.
Yes, no, you don't count. You don't count. That's not old. Yes, yeah. Some of us have been around a long time, and you get to that point where you can just run your faith on autopilot to the point where it's not faith anymore. Or we have to continue to go back and dig for our faith, to dig for our trust in God. We really do. Because it is so easy to slip away, and you don't even know it. It's not that some big thing happens in your life and you just automatically fall apart and lose your faith. That can happen. But the more likely way for it to happen is it, again, one drop on your head at a time until you just can't take it anymore. That's where we lose our faith. So what are we going to do to keep that faith? What are we going to do to dig in? Well, one, we need to talk about it. Now, it used to be you'd walk around the fellowship and you'd like, oh, bro, sister, what kind of sins have you been in this week? What kind of sin have you been involved in? There's some quality in that. But to me, the bigger question is, so how's your faith in God? What has pulled you away from that faith? What has built you up? What have you done in your faith? Give me some clues. Help me. Give me some answers. Right? And I think we're all going to come to the finish line in our lives. Sorry. We will. Just how it goes. You know, if you get to be 64 and you're not thinking about the end of your life, then you sort of, you know, you're in la-la land because you're not really dealing with, you know, what's really going on. The finish line. So this Paul at the end of his life. And Paul says this. He says, "For I am already being poured out like a drink offering, and the time for my departure is near. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Now there is in store for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day, and not only to me, but also to all who have longed for his appearing." You're all going to die. Sorry if that was new for you. If that was new, sorry. How do you want to do it? How do you want to do it? How do you want to enter into it? How do you want to embrace it? It's like, listen, I'm going to die. As Christians, as nutty as this sounds, it's not something we should fear. It's something that as we get to that point in our life, that we embrace. Because we've been told, after all this stuff we've read in the Bible, that it should be a whole lot better than it is here. Right? Yep. Paul was wrapping his arms around it. He said, I'm ready. I have spent my life honoring God. And I'm ready to go. I mean, I was considering using the book of 2 Peter. Same thing. Peter's the same way. I'm ready. I know my crown is assured from the faith that I've had and the life that I've lived. Now, I don't know about you. I want to go into my death that way. I want that to be something that my faith is so deep and so rock solid that I have no doubts and that I can embrace that faith. Faith is, one of those things it's a word that we talk about. It's a word we throw around. Oh yeah, I'm just trying to be faithful. Well, what is, that when somebody says that to you, that needs more explanation. What did you mean by that? But as we think about this concept of faith, and as we go into these lessons about faith and talk about them, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of good ones, let us remember that hanging on to that faith and getting deeper and getting more connected in your faith with God, in your faith in Jesus Christ, will build you up to the point where you feel as faithful as you possibly can. And please don't misunderstand me. I'm the chief of sinners on this area. I personally need to grow so much in my faith. So thanks for considering these things. Have a great rest of your day.